Russia possessed more than 90% of the world's nuclear weapons. Russia admits to having over 6,200 nuclear warheads, while the U.S. claims to have just over 5,500. In comparison, U.S. allies France and the U.K. have less than 300 warheads each. And while we don't fully know the extent of Russia's nuclear capabilities, we do know what nuclear weapons are capable of. The blast can be felt miles away from where a missile's hit. Buildings can explode, people burned by the force, and nuclear fallout can last anywhere from days to even years. I'm joined again by retired Marine Colonel Mark Cancian, currently a senior advisor at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Colonel Cancian, again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Okay, so, we're learning more today. As each day goes by, we learn a little bit more. How likely is it that, that warship did actually have active nuclear weapons on board when it went down?
I mean, it's possible. These ships can carry nuclear weapons, and I think during the Cold War they did, as our ships did. After the Cold War, nations took many of those weapons off. They were dangerous. So you can say it's possible. And if it is, turns out that they do have nuclear weapons, I think it's going to be a big push to go down and get them. It's not unprecedented that there are nuclear weapons sunk on the bottom of the ocean. Some of our submarines are down there with nuclear weapons. Some of their submarines are down there. But the technology is now pretty good, so you could go down there and pull those weapons off so that no one else gets them and they're rendered safe.
Well, so speaking of that, what would it take? What would have to happen at this point for us to possibly see Putin end up resorting to chemical or even nuclear weapons?
Well, there's been a lot of speculation that as he gets frustrated on the battlefield, particularly if he were to suffer reverses, not just a stalemate, but if the Ukrainians went on the offensive and were maybe and the Russians were facing defeat, collapse of the army, that he might use these extreme weapons. It would be, of course, very escalatory. It would be a horrible thing because, nations have not used nuclear weapons, certainly since 1945, and chemical weapons are forbidden. But we're at a point now where we have to say, well, it's not impossible, although it's still unlikely because of possible retaliation. I'd also note that if you want, for the use of these on the battlefield, you have to use a lot of them because military forces tend to be protected. Against civilians, they're absolutely devastating.
So, Colonel, you say it's not impossible. So if, it's not impossible, obviously, would the U.S. have to respond if Putin does, in fact, use nuclear weapons?
It would put the United States in a terrible position. I think we would be really forced to make some response. I don't think we would use nuclear weapons in retaliation. We would try to put some defensive shield over Ukraine, maybe with air defenses, long-range air defenses. The options are not very good. And if Putin did this, this kind of escalation, it would really cross a red line, and we would be in a very different situation in Europe and in the world.
Yeah, very dire situation here. Well, our NewsNation viewers tell us nuclear war really is a very big fear. For them, how likely could a targeted nuclear strike by Russia lead potentially to a full-scale war?
Well, fortunately, there are many steps to go through before the U.S. homeland would be threatened. First, of course, would there be the use of possibly nuclear weapons in Ukraine. The United States would make some response, maybe a defensive response. The Russians would maybe counter that. One would certainly hope that we would not get to the point where we would be attacking each other's homeland. Not impossible, but I think extremely unlikely, fortunately.
All right, and we certainly do like to hear that. Retired Colonel Mark Cancian, thank you so much. Have a great weekend. Thank you for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.